Okay, hello. What's up, everybody? Miss Lynch here. This is the first half of Chapter 12's lecture. Okay. Hopefully you have all your stuff ready to go. I do not. Ready now? Okay, just like that, she's ready. Okay, so Chapter 12. Chapter 11, we just talked about slavery, and when we left off, it was getting to the point where we are now into the abolitionist movement, so to speak. So people are starting to organize and speak out against slavery. And yes, okay, so that's where we're at basically. All right, chapter 12, an age of reform. So 1820 to 1840. That's where we're at. Okay. So the reform impulse kind of is a defining term of our time here. Okay, so numerous voluntary associations participated in reforms. So we'll talk about some of those. Okay, reformers adopted a wide variety of tactics to bring about social change. And people were looking at all sorts of stuff. So not just slavery. We'll get into this. Feminism will be part of it. Communal living will be part of it. All sorts of stuff, okay? But so utopian communities uh, will start to pop up in the United States. And about 100 reform communities would show up in the decades before the Civil War. Okay, nearly all set out to reorganize society on some sort of cooperative basis, so communal living, hoping to restore social harmony and to relieve the world of to restore social harmony to a world of excessive individualism, okay, and to narrow the widening gap between rich and poor. All right, and this is all considered to come out of Thomas More's 16th century novel Utopia. Okay, the first time we have the nomenclature, the term to associate with this. Okay, so yeah, some were religious, some were secular. This is just a trend going on all over the place, and like I said, all sorts of different focuses. All right. So socialism and communism entered the language in these communities. Most tried to find substitutes for conventional gender relations and marriage patterns. Okay, some prohibited sex. Some allowed to change partners. Right, nearly all instituted that the abolition of private property must be accomplished or accompanied by an end to men's property and women. And then one of the first groups we'll have developed during this time are known as the Shakers. Okay, I'm not going to get into them too much, but that's a large community. Okay, looking at our next slide, we also have Oneida. They now make servingware, so like china sets, silverware. There's a good chance someone in your life, parents or grandparents, has Oneida ware somewhere. Okay, and so Oneida is another one of our groups. Robert Owen was one of the early organizers behind this kind of utopian push. Okay, and then if you would be so kind as to look at page 345, utopian communities in the mid 19th century. So that just shows you how many of these were popping up all over the place. Yeah, and like I said, lots of different scopes and different attitudes, goals, all that jazz. So you can look at different communities and see what they were all about. Okay. Righty, religion and reform. Okay, so some reform movements drew on their own inspiration from the religious revivalism of the Second Great Awakening. Okay, the revivals popularized the outlook known as perfectionism, which saw both individuals and society at large as capable of indefinite improvement. Okay, so always there's always good to be found, right? Okay, under the impact of revivals, older reform efforts moved in a new radical direction. Again, that's just what is going on across the board during this time. So we're looking at things like temperance, pacifism, abolition. Okay. To members of the North's emerging middle class culture, reform became a badge of respectability. So it was kind of trending at the time. Okay. Okay. And like I said, temperance is one of these movements. Temperance will become uh, a bigger focus in the 1880s and then in the 1920s again with prohibition, right? Okay, critics of reform. Okay, I'm going to start over. Critics of reform. All right. Many Americans saw the reform impulse as an attack on their own freedom. Who'd have thunk, right? Okay, so this very much found its way into religious groups. Okay, so for example, Catholics rallied against the temperance movement. The numbers of Catholics was growing as a result of Irish and German immigration. We talked about this before, the potato famine, or not just the potato famine, but famine in Europe is going on. So that leads to that spike in immigration from Irish and German groups. Okay. Okay, they viewed temperance as an attack because taverns were popular meeting places for urban working men, sites not only for drinking but for political organization, meetings, and recreation. Okay, and drinking was a prominent feature of festive celebrations. Think Oktoberfest, right? And events like militia gatherings. All right, so reformers and freedom. The vision of freedom expressed by the reform movements was liberating and controlling at the same time. So, catch 22. Many religious groups in the East, so the Eastern US, formed reform groups promoting religious virtue. So, we have groups like the American Tract Society and American Bible Society. Okay, and then the invention of asylum. Okay, Americans embarked on a program of institution building in the 1830s, 1840s. Like I said, uh, social movements, all of this is trending. Okay, so there are things like jails, poorhouses, asylums, orphanages. Um, yeah, those are all being built during the 1830s, 1840s. These were inspired by the conviction that those who passed through their doors could eventually be released to become productive, self-disciplined citizens, working towards, the greater good, right? Okay, so we have our utopian societies, really focusing on marital life, the home, okay? Asylums are focusing on social movements like incarceration, okay, things like that. And then we have stuff like education, okay? So the common school will develop during this time. Okay, so a tax-supported state public school system, blah, 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 open to all children was widely adopted in the North during this time. This is our public school system that we know today, okay? This is the early roots of that, okay? Okay, so in the 19th century, most children were educated in locally supported schools, private academies, charity schools, or at home. Many had no access at all. Not everyone would learn to read or write during their lifetimes, so the upcoming generations of, well, our education, it's just completely shifted during this time. But anyway, okay. But yeah, so this is just school reform by and large, okay? So Horace Mann, there's a good chance that at least one person in our group went to an elementary school named after Horace Mann because most communities that have multiple elementary schools, there are Horace Mann schools. Okay, so Horace Mann was the era's leading educational reformer. He believed that education could restore equality to a fractured society as an avenue for social advancement. And in addition to middle school reformers, factory owners supported um, public school systems. Okay, so each state by pretty much the beginning of the Civil War had a common school system. Common schools provided the first real career opportunities for women. Okay, so most of the educators that come about during this time, are women, and yeah, they came to dominate the ranks of that field. Okay, so the lack of public education in the South only widened the divide between the North and the South. Um, Literary African Americans were increasingly viewed as a danger to social order, and planters um, who had no desire to tax themselves to pay for education in the South for poor Caucasian children, and the educational system of the South completely lagged far behind um, that where public education was being used. Okay. Okay. So the crusade against slavery, or colonization. Okay, so the American Colonization Society, the ACS, was founded in 1816 and promoted the gradual abolition of slavery and the settlement of um, African Americans in Africa. Excuse me. So the ACS founded um, Liberia, it comes from the name liberation, right? But it was founded as a colony in West Africa to ideally um, send free slaves, African Americans, back to Africa. Okay, so this colony is founded in West Africa. The capital was Monrovia, named after James Monroe. Okay, yeah, and this was criticized as impractical. Okay, but it was supported by many prominent leaders, right? Okay, so like Indian removal, which we talked about, colonization rested on the premise that America was fundamentally a Caucasian society. So rather than ending slavery and trying to incorporate freed people into American society, the concept was to then send them back to Africa. Okay, so yeah, this rests in this idea that America was fundamentally Caucasian. Okay. So several thousand African Americans emigrated to Liberia as part of this program. Um, okay. Most African Americans adamantly opposed this idea of colonization. They insisted that African Americans were Americans, right? Therefore entitled to the same rights as Caucasians. Okay. And in 1817, free African Americans assembled in Philadelphia for the first National Black Convention, as it was referred to. Okay. So, um, yeah, we're getting into abolitionism. This colonization idea is kind of the baby stages of this, all right? And so where we will go from here, we're at the halfway point, so I'll call it. Um, but I'll pick back up with militant abolitionism. So, like I said, colonization, little infant baby steps, little baby doe on those wobbly legs, and then as soon as kind of gains strength, it then shifts into militant abolitionism. So there's a shift away from that. Um, but that's where we will go from here on out in part 2 of chapter 12. And my phone is about to die, so I'm not going to upload it today. Hopefully, I should get it done on Thursday. So give me a couple days, and I'll be back for the second half of this. Overcoming Wi-Fi issues, so I will be back on campus then. So that's where I'll finish it in a couple of days. Okay. If you guys need anything, please shoot me an email. If there's anything important, I'll post it on D2L, okay? And otherwise, I will talk to you guys or the second half of chapter 2 on a different day. Okay? Have a good one. I'll talk to you guys later. Okay?